Now just try to follow this, because the mind, oh, the clever, frightened, bargaining mind, will resist precisely at the point where the ego is offended. This is not comfort talk. This is discipleship talk. Please remember that. We are not gathered for a little pat on the back or a new incantation to make the old fears behave. We are here to be corrected into reality. And the first correction must sound like a rebuke to habit. Stop recruiting God into your personal emergency. You know the habit. Sickness breaks out, and we cry, "God, fix this." A bill comes due. "God, bring money." A relationship has gone cold. "God, change them, change me, change something." Fear rises like smoke in the chest. "God, put it out." As if God were a celestial repairman, moving from job to job with a sack of tools, health, supply, protection, companionship, dispensed on demand. Oh, no, no, no. Please try to see that in this attitude we are not approaching God. We are enthroning the problem and deputizing a God of our own making to handle it. Now actually, and I want you to hear this with the categorical weight it deserves, actually there is no relationship between God and your problems as problems. They are entirely separate and distinct realms. God is not in the problem business. God is not a fixer of effects, not a competitor set opposite to your fear, lack, or disease. The moment you set up a problem for God to solve, you have already demoted God to a function and promoted the appearance to a power. And in that reversal, the ego secretly keeps its throne. Do not mistake this, please. This teaching is not anti-help. Spirit is help itself. But it is irrevocably anti-instrumentalizing. The spiritual life begins, mark it well, when you stop using God and begin seeking God. Seeking God, not a changed condition. Seeking presence, not proof. Seeking being, not benefits. For the instant you attempt to use God, you have confessed that something besides God has power, and you are appealing to a greater power to overpower a lesser one. And that keeps you in the universe of powers and counterpowers, where there is no peace. So I set before you the governing mantra, the one sentence that unclutters this whole inquiry. God is, and that's enough to know. God is, that's all. Just rest in that. Now then, can you feel the ego become impatient? Yes, but what about my situation? Please remember, the situation is not your savior. God is. The mind will want techniques. The soul wants God. Choose whom you will serve. And as you choose, in that very choosing, the desperation begins to loosen. Because being does not answer as a supplier. Being answers as itself, peace, out of which everything necessary takes its rightful, effortless place. Thank you. Thank you. Now then, follow this closely, because here is where the mind, with its pious phrases and trembling needs, most cleverly hides from the light. When most of us say we are praying, what are we really doing? We are drafting heaven into the service of me and mine. Save my health, preserve my income, protect my image, make my child succeed, keep my comfort undisturbed. Oh, no, no, no. Please remember, that is not reverence, that is bargaining. That is not bowing before God, that is installing a private altar to the self and calling it prayer. It is the ego's religion, the liturgy of self-preservation draped in sacred words. Now just try to see the mechanism at work. The moment the personal self becomes the petitioner, the problem becomes the priest, and God is reduced to a helpful usher. We tell the problem's story again and again. Its symptoms, its deadlines, its dangers. And we ask God to come add power to that story. In the very act of asking, we have announced our faith in the story's power. In the very heat of our urgent prayer, we are fueling the little fire with our breath. Emotion rehearses it. Language chisels it in stone. Attention polishes it into an idol. Do you see? The more we importune God to remove the mountain, the more we enthrone the mountain as something that stands before God. And that is blasphemy against the allness. Oh, no, no, no. God is not summoned to compete with the mountain. God is. Please remember this point, because it will govern everything that follows. Either God is the center and life is the effect, or the problem is the center and God is the servant. One must make a choice of one or the other. You cannot divide allegiance. You cannot set up two centers of gravity in one consciousness and hope for steady orbit. If God is the center, peace is the law and harmony the afterglow. If the problem is the center, anxiety is the law and temporary reprieves the after effect. Mixed reliance produces mixed results. A borrowed phrase here, a quick petition there, and all the while the hidden worship continues at the shrine of fear. Now listen, because this is the piercing question that turns the light inward. What if the very act of asking God to fix is the way we keep the problem alive? What if every urgent petition is a fresh confession? I believe in this appearance. I declare its reality. I assign it power. And then I invite God to play rescuer in a drama I refuse to end. Can we not see that devotion to description is devotion to continuance? That attention is adhesive and fear is the glue? Then the correction must be radical. Stop feeding the altar at which the ego officiates. Withdraw the incense of your words, the oil of your tears, the spotlight of your thought. Not to become indifferent to life, but to become devoted to life itself. In place of petition, let there be recognition. In place of rehearsing the tale of need, let there be resting in that which is before need and beyond need. God is, and that's enough to know. God is, that's all. And in that simple, undivided knowing, the false center loses gravity, and peace quietly takes the throne. Thank you. Thank you. Now then, try to follow this as a spiritual law and not as a slogan you can hang on the refrigerator. Never expect anything of God. Seek God. Please remember this is not a clever turn of phrase. It is the hard sentence that heals. It offends the bargaining mind because the bargaining mind needs a future payoff. Expectation lives there, in tomorrow, in later, in when the answer comes. Oh, no, no, no. God is not in your future. God is. And that is enough to know. God is. That's all. Expectation secretly declares distance. Expectation quietly pushes good away by placing it in time and then trying to rope a future God into a present fear. Expectation assigns reality to the problem because it says, until God acts, this condition stands. Do you see the blasphemy hidden in that? You have granted the appearance a lease on being and then hired God to be your eviction officer. Expectation uses God. Realization knows God. Expectation plans and pleads. Realization recognizes and rests. In realization, the question ends because the answer is present as presence. Not tomorrow, not if, not when. Here. Here where I am in God, and God is the being of me. In that recognition, the problem loses its audience. It has no stage left on which to perform, because consciousness has turned its face to the light. Let us purify this with holy negation. Not, God, change the circumstance. Not, God, remove the symptom. Not, God, send supply. Not, God, manage the outcome. Not, do you see? Not any of these. Why? Because in every such petition you have set up two powers, a resisting condition and an answering God. But actually there is no such warfare. God is not a power over error. God is the allness in which error has no law, no principle, no substance. God does not give you peace as a package. God is peace realized. God does not deliver supply as a shipment. God is the substance, the very isness of all true sufficiency. God does not mend a life torn in two. God is the life, indivisible, in which no tear can be found. So then, what is prayer? Not the attempt to get God to do something. Prayer is the quiet, reverent coming to awareness of what eternally is. Omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience. Not as attributes sent to you, but as being itself in which you already abide. Prayer is the holy turning from the report of the senses to the fact of spirit. Prayer is this simple devotion. God is. God is. And in that knowing, the center shifts. Once the goal becomes God, the problem can no longer be the central conversation in your consciousness. It may knock at the door, it may speak loudly in the street, but you are not home to it. You are at home in God, and in that home, quiet reigns. In that home, peace answers before the question forms. Never expect anything of God. Seek God. Seek, not for outcomes, but for presence. Seek, and watch how the clamor without loses its power because it has lost your attention. Seek and rest. God is, and that's enough to know. Thank you. Thank you. Now just try to follow this, because here is the point at which many nod and yet miss the pivot that changes the whole way of living. God does not give you peace. God is peace. God does not send supply. God is supply. God does not deliver health. God is the life of your being. Please remember that. This is the metaphysical inversion that offends and frees. It offends because the ego lives on transactions. I ask, God delivers. I pledge, God pays. I perform, God rewards. Oh, no, no, no. Being is not a dealer standing across a counter from you. Being is the very substance, the isness of what you thought you were trying to obtain. The moment being is recognized, the counter disappears, the deal dissolves, and with it the sense that you, as a separated self, can manage God by method. Do you see why the ego protests? If there is no transaction, there is no leverage. If there is no supplier separate from the good, there is no bargaining chip. No promise you can make to coax a favor, no timetable you can manipulate. The ego, poor thing, has built its temple on the idea of getting. But spirit is not in the commerce of getting. Spirit is the allness in which nothing is absent and nothing can be added. Actually, there is no relationship between a supplicant's plan and the presence of God. They are entirely separate and distinct. God is. That is the fact before which planning bows and into which fear collapses. Now then, what does this mean practically? To seek God is not to seek an answer. It is to seek awareness until presence is a felt fact. Emmanuel, God with us. Not a concept, not a sentence on the wall, but a hush that steals over the heart, a certainty that does not lean on outcomes because it rests in being. You relax, not to make something happen, but to uncover what is already happening as omnipresence. You grow quiet, not to earn a result, but to hear what was never silent. I am. In that communion, the transaction vanishes because the two have been revealed as one. Now please do not misunderstand. This is not denial of human experience. It is refusal to grant it spiritual authority. Appearances parade, sensation, report, balance sheet, diagnosis, and we meet them with honesty as to their presence in the scene, but not with reverence as to their law. We are not calling a shadow a substance. We are recognizing substance, and in that recognition, shadows thin of themselves. My kingdom is not of this world, not because this world is to be hated or ignored, but because its claims to power are not ultimate, not original, not God. When God is recognized as substance, the entire solution machine collapses. There is nothing to fix by power. There is only presence to realize, and from that realized peace, the problem loses its audience and its stage. Stability begins there, single, steady, unsensational being, out of which the harmonies of body and life naturally align, not by manipulation, but by grace. God is, and that's enough to know. God is, that's all. Thank you. Thank you. Now then, follow this, because here is the boundary line on which many of us wobble and wonder why the ground keeps shifting. There are two systems, and they proceed from two centers. One begins with matter and tries to improve matter, adjusts, manipulates, doses, predicts, and hopes that by moving pieces on the board, the game will yield a little more comfort. The other begins with spirit and realizes spirit's allness, rests, listens, yields, and knows that being is the board, the player, and the life of the game. Please remember this. Actually, there is no relationship between the two. They are entirely separate and distinct in principle. One treats effects as causes, the other honors cause as all. One leans on phenomena for assurance, the other leans on principle and lets phenomena follow. Now try to see why results seem sporadic when we do not understand this. Without principle, you can get an occasional relief, an episode, a fortunate turn, a mercy in the weather of circumstance. Oh yes, phenomena can swing in your favor now and then, but you cannot count on weather. You cannot build a life on gusts. When you know the principle, when your reliance is consciously set on spirit as being and not as a sometimes helper, you discover a harmony you can count on, not because appearances always flatter you, but because peace holds you regardless, and out of that peace, the forms of life tend to arrange themselves rightly, consistently, without your strain. Now listen closely, because here is the hidden leak in the boat. Divided allegiance is inner instability. You cannot stand in reliance upon spirit while secretly believing that the real cause and cure are in appearances. Oh no, no, no. If the diagnosis, the balance sheet, the opinion, the calendar is your actual center of power, then your prayer is only an appeal to a higher appearance to overrule a lower one. That is mixed reliance, and it yields mixed results. A foot in two boats does not make for a safe crossing. One must make a choice of center. Not outwardly displaying a choice, This is not about throwing away or adopting methods, but inwardly setting the throne. Which is power? Which do you confess as law? That is the choice. Please do not hear in this any condemnation of your frightened humanity. In a moment of fear, in a sharp pain of circumstance, you may reach for anything that seems near. We recognize that. But as disciples, we also recognize our work, to come back and come back again to single-pointed reliance in consciousness. Return to the one center. Relax into the recognition God is, not to make something happen, but to abide where things already are held in order. And then, watch the storm lose your attention. Watch the mind that demanded two powers soften into one. Now then, let this be the bridge on which we walk into the next part of our work. The issue is not methods out here. The issue is center in here. You could use or not use 100 outward means and remain unstable if your belief is in appearances. You could also watch outward things fall away of themselves if your conviction is settled in spirit. Stability comes when we cease mixing centers of power and acknowledge one law, one life, one presence. God is, and that's enough to know. God is. That's all. Thank you. Thank you. Now then, follow this, because here is where the whole conversation turns from ideas about God to the felt presence of God. Healing, as we are using the word, is not that a symptom goes away, a balance sheet brightens, a quarrel dissolves. Oh, no, no, no. Those are effects. And please remember, effects can be counterfeited, timed, or traded by the world's winds. Healing is the finding of ourselves in God. Healing is the discovery, quiet, unmistakable, that I abide in being, and being abides as me. And in that awareness, a peace that passeth understanding settles the heart. Not a peace about something, not a peace because a report has changed, but my peace, my peace. The instant of communion is the instant of healing. What is the evidence? Not first in flesh or figures, but in the disappearance of fear's engine. Fear thrives on separation, on a self out here and a threat out there. In communion, that premise is dissolved. God is, and in God there is no opposite, no second power to dread, no law beyond the one law of spirit. As this peace is realized, please hear realized, not manufactured. Fear cannot find its fuel, and the body, relieved of the tyranny of alarm and the hypnosis of a second power, resumes its normal functions. Life, no longer jerked by panic and driven by rehearsal of lack, begins to arrange itself in ways that look like order, sufficiency, right companionship. But we do not chase those forms. We rest in the peace. Forms follow. Now the world will bring you its list. Disease, lack, conflict, danger, injustice. It will testify with charts and headlines and memories and projections. And we do not argue with it on its own level. We relocate our safety. My kingdom is not of this world. Do you see the pivot? We are not denying experience. We are refusing to enthrone it. Safety is not in better weather, but in the realization, I dwell in God. And dwelling there, the rains may come or not, but the house does not fall, because its foundation is being, not event. Can we really doubt that outer harmonies are most dependable when the inner center is established? If you chase the shadow, the light eludes you. If you turn to the light, the shadow arranges itself at your feet without your management. So please remember cause and effect in their right order. Inner realization is cause. Bodily and circumstantial ease is effect. The moment you reverse this, I will be at peace when the symptom clears, when the money comes, when they apologize. You have bound peace to form and postponed God. Oh, no, no, no. Chase the light, not the shadow. Seek the kingdom, not its benefits. Let communion be the practice and harmony the byproduct. Now then, how do we actually move from petition to communion when pressure is on? When the mind is loud and the heart is racing? Not by wrestling the appearance, not by pleading for a change of scene, but by a holy turning, quiet, simple, into the fact of omnipresence. We will take that up next in practical terms. For now, accept this as your standard. The primary demonstration is peace. Mark it in your heart. Seek peace in God and watch how, resting there, body and life remember their right order without your strain. God is, and that's enough to know. God is, that's all. Thank you. Thank you. Now then, here is the practice when the pressure mounts and the mind begins to perform its little acrobatics on the wire. Please remember this as single, sufficient instruction. Relax, mentally and physically, into the assurance that here and now God is. Let the shoulders fall. Let the breath soften. Loosen the grip of the jaw and the fists and the thoughts. Not in order to make something happen, oh no, 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 but to reveal what already is. Do not take hold of the problem's narrative to twist it into a better shape. Do not argue. Do not debate with images. Relax into omnipresence. God is, and that's enough to know. When thought starts racing, and it will in the beginning, do not meet racing with wrestling. Replace argument with recognition. Quietly, without strain, return to the simple knowing. God is. God is. Not as a charm, but as a turning of attention from appearance to presence. Be still and know that I am God. Let that be the tone. Each time a new angle of the fear tries to sell itself to you, answer with no words to it at all. Answer by coming home. God is. You are not trying to convince yourself by volume or by logic. You are consenting to awareness. You are consenting to the felt fact that being, here, now, is. Now notice the secret of the stage. The problem is an actor that can only play if it has an audience and a light. Your attention is both audience and light. Every time you retell its lines, you pay for a ticket and switch on the spotlight. The moment you withdraw attention, not with hatred, not with denial, but with holy indifference rooted in presence, the play cannot continue. It may bang around behind the curtain for a while, noise without a scene, but it has lost the front of the house. Do you see? We are not empowering the scene by anxious watching. We are letting the noise tire itself out for want of fuel, while we rest in what is. And when the thoughts come back, but what about, and if not, and what then? Do not call that failure. Please remember this point. Every return is training. Every gentle turning back to God is the building of a new habit of reliance. 10 times in a minute? Good. 70 times 7? Good. Each time, without judgment, release the story and relax again into omnipresence until the noise stops. Not by force, not by timing spirit, but by abiding. If you find yourself tightening to get quiet, Notice the tightening and relax even that. Yield. Yield again. God is. God is. This is not blind faith. This is principle applied. If God is omnipresence, there is no second presence competing for law. If spirit is all, error has no substance but belief. Remove belief, withdraw the audience, and the seeming power dissolves of itself. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Not as a future rescue, but as the atmosphere discovered when you cease bowing to a second power. The primary sign will be the hush within, the little click by which you know peace has taken the seat. Let that be enough in that moment. From there, action becomes natural, or inaction becomes natural, but panic has no vote. So in the night when fear wakes you, in the office with a report in hand, at the table with a bill, do not fight the paper or the picture. Sit, breathe, loosen, and return gently and continuously to the fact. God is. Wait 5 breaths or 50 until the inner weather clears, until the compulsion to manage subsides, until presence is the felt environment. Then move if there is movement. Say yes or no as is given. But keep the line simple. No techniques layered on techniques. Relax into omnipresence until the noise stops. God is, and that's enough to know. God is. That's all. Thank you. Thank you. Now then, follow this, because having learned to turn within, we must now learn to keep the within within. Enter into thy closet. Please remember this, not as piety, but as practice. Keep your troubles bottled up inside. Not to suppress them, oh, no, no, no. Not to bury pain in a dark corner where it will ferment, but to stop feeding them to the world mind and to halt the ego's little theater. The moment you begin to parade the problem, to rehearse it for listeners, to solicit their reactions, you call in the chorus of collective belief, and with each telling, you chisel the form deeper in the consciousness of those who hear and in your own. Secrecy here is not secrecy from God. It is secrecy from the hypnotism of public attention. Enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to thy Father which is in secret. Do you see the wisdom? Shut the door on gossip, on pity, on admiration, on argument, so that the Father which seeth in secret can be the only witness. Now just try to see this with the seriousness it deserves. The more you broadcast an appearance, the more permission you grant it to live in the group mind. The more you collect opinions, statistics, and sympathetic sighs, the more cords you tie between yourself and a report that never had law in spirit. Oh, no, no, no. We are not building prayer projects. We are dissolving false centers. Every time you refrain from telling the story, you withdraw an audience. Every time you keep silent and turn within, you dim the spotlight. This is the holy sabotage of the ego's publicity department. Secrecy, rightly held, is the withdrawal of power from appearances. But please remember, the same law governs our successes. Do not parade your demonstrations. Do not display your healings, your improved accounts, your happy turns as trophies of a spiritual method you, this marvelous you, have mastered. Every attempt to glorify the human self will deprive us of the fruit of grace. Let not thy left hand know what thy right hand doeth. Why? Because the moment you step forward for applause, you step out of the closet where the Father works. You exchange the reward of peace for the currency of praise, and the work becomes performance again. keep it quiet, keep it holy. Let the reward be open in its own way, in its own time, as harmony that needs no signature. Now hear this mercy. Be grateful if in the hour of pressure you have no human understanding. Be grateful if you cannot argue the case or craft a clever affirmation. His understanding is infinite. Your emptiness is the opening. I of mine own self can do nothing. This is not defeat. It is doorway. In humility, the self that would manage, fix, defend, and report steps aside. And in that vacancy, realization enters, unobstructed by your opinions about how it should appear. This is the mechanism, simple and strong. Secrecy and humility remove ego interference, so spiritual realization can operate without distortion. Then, prayer is no longer a stage act or a bulletin. It is communion, quiet, interior, certain. Enter the closet, shut the door. Say little, be much. Rest in God is. God is, and that's enough to know. God is, that's all. Thank you. Thank you. Now then, follow this, because here is where the work we have done turns into the way you live tomorrow morning, and the morning after that. After the shift, you are no longer a problem manager enlisting divinity as a consultant. Oh, no, no, no. You are a disciple. Please remember that word. A student of one thing only: abiding. Not juggling outcomes, not negotiating with appearances, but learning to remain at home in God. The identity stance changes. I must fix becomes I will abide. I must be seen as successful becomes I will be found in peace. We as students, disciples, make our dwelling in presence, and from that dwelling, the forms of life find their order. What does this look like? Less emotional whiplash. Fewer bargains whispered to the sky. If this turns, I promise. And more quiet listening before you move, before you speak, before you answer a ringing phone. The day that used to be a string of alarms becomes a sequence of callings to return. Each appearance of discord, please hear this, becomes a bell, not a verdict. When the bill arrives, when the report jars, when a word cuts, the old reflex says, panic, plan, push. The new habit says, return. Not to ignore the scene, but to refuse it the throne. God is, and then you answer the email, pay the bill, make the call, from a seat that is already quiet. Problems are addressed from peace rather than panic, and so action is simpler, truer, less wasteful of life. You will notice speech softens, reactions slow down and ripen into responses. You do not need to win the little courtroom of conversation because peace has already judged to mercy. You stop looking for signs every hour. Is it working? Is it not? And you begin to feel the slow current of a river that does not argue with stones. Inwardly, the bargaining mind retires. Outwardly, you may look very ordinary, going to work, mending a fence, sharing a meal. But the center has shifted, and with it, the atmosphere you carry. Now please measure rightly. Do not count your progress by episodes, this or that breakthrough, this or that coincidence that flattered your hopes. Count by continuing harmonies, the growing constancy of peace, the shorter trips into fear and the quicker returns, the steadiness that remains when winds arrive. Can you count on peace? Can you find it again and again without theatrics? That is the measure. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Liberty from compulsion, from the tyranny of hurry. from the need to be impressive. The point is not to become a spiritual celebrity. Oh, no, no, no. The point is freedom. Quiet, affectionate, usable freedom. So the days become simple. Rise, be still. Remember God is. Move into tasks as led. Pause often to let the bell call you back. Say little about the inner work. Give thanks without audience. Rest when you are tired. Forgive quickly because there is nothing to defend. And as this becomes your normal, desperation is replaced by stability, drama by devotion, petition by presence. God is, and that's enough to know. God is, that's all. Thank you. Thank you. Now then, follow this, because here we come to the simple, final word upon which the rest of your days can depend. You must make a choice. Will you live as a petitioner, using God to maintain a personal program, or as a disciple, seeking God as being? One must make a choice of one or the other. Rarely will the right results come from the combination of them. Please remember, this is not a dramatic vow you take once with fireworks and testimonials. It is a quiet decision you renew at dawn and after lunch and before sleep. A steady allegiance that sets the throne in your own consciousness and will not move. Here is the method, reduced to 3 beats, so clear that even in the night you can find them. First, stop expecting outcomes. Never expect anything of God. Expectation is bargaining with tomorrow, and tomorrow is not where God is. Oh, no, no, no. Second, seek presence. Turn, relax, and know God is. God is. Not an idea, a felt fact entered by stillness. Third, let peace be the evidence. Not the paper, not the symptom, not the praise of friends. Peace. My peace. And as that peace takes the seat, the problem loses its audience, loses its stage, and must retire to the wings for want of your attention. That is the law at work. Withdraw belief, and the counterfeit fades. Give belief, and the play sells more tickets. Choose your audience. Now please be reassured. You are not asked to strain, to posture, to manufacture a holy mood. You are asked to consent, again and again, to omnipresence, until it is felt as fact. Be still, and know that I am God. If you find you must return 70 times 7 in a day, good. Each return is the training of reliance. Each gentle God is loosens the world's grip on the reins of your heart. Do not time spirit. Do not grade yourself. Do not listen for echoes. Sit, breathe, yield. And when the hush arrives, whether in a second or in minutes, let it be enough. From that hush, action or inaction will be given without the strain of self-will. Keep the work within and keep it quiet. Enter into thy closet. Shut the door on the world's pity and the world's praise. Keep your troubles bottled up inside, so the Father, which seeth in secret, is your only witness. And let not thy left hand know what thy right hand doeth when harmony appears. Secrecy is your protection, humility your shield. Together they silence the ego's publicity and leave room for grace to reveal itself openly as order, sufficiency, right adjustment, without your autograph on it. Every attempt to glorify the human self will deprive us of the fruit of grace. Oh, no, no, no. Let the Father do the works. So here is the charge and the comfort. Make the choice. God at the center. Keep the work quiet. Closet, door, hush. Return to the one refrain until it becomes the air you breathe. God is. God is. And the peace that follows becomes your normal state. When the wind rises, return. When the mind argues, return. When joy visits, return. Choose God as the center. Keep the work inward and still, and abide until abiding is natural. God is. God is. And that's enough. Thank you. Thank you.